Well, hi there. I am Dr. Patrick Hickey, or Dr. H, as many of my students refer to me. I want to welcome you to an episode of the International Service Learning Experiential Education podcast. It has been my honor to be the host of this podcast, where our goal has always been to hear the voices of those that have been involved in international service. This week, we are continuing our summer process of revisiting and re-editing previous episodes, as each and every episode is quite unique, with all sharing a common theme, that of stepping out of one's comfort zone to provide service internationally. Organ donation, global service, and a med school journey was originally released on January 19th, and to date has been one of our most listened to podcasts. This episode covers a little bit of everything and should appeal to all. Shelby's path through her undergraduate years and her employment post-undergrad during what are called her gap years before starting med school make her stand out as a very unique individual, not afraid to take on the next challenge, whatever that may be. Traveling to Nicaragua on a medical mission trip during her college years, a post-graduation job with Teach for America, and then a life-changing role as an organ transplant coordinator are but a few of the challenges that Shelby has been exposed to. Check out her podcast for an in-depth discussion of an alternative gap year for a college student that is trying to be as well-rounded as possible as she prepares for med school. You won't be disappointed. I'm real excited to have Shelby as my guest, and just full disclosure, we've known each other for years. Shelby's a former student of mine at the University of South Carolina, and it's been a few years, but we've been able to connect over the years, but this is a first face-to-face opportunity we've had in some time, and I'm excited for Shelby to share her path in healthcare because she's had a very exciting path. I think all of us uniquely find our own path in different ways, and Shelby's has been a different path of sorts, and I've been part of that path. So I'm excited for her to share because, my hopes are that some of the people listening to the podcast will hear something that will inspire them to do something that they hadn't considered before. And that's the beauty of being able to host so many people that I've traveled with. They all bring a lot of different expertise and talent to the table, so to speak. So before we get into that, Shelby, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you went to school, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Dr. Hickey. It's really nice to reconnect with you after all these years. I am Shelby. I was a student at USC from 2016, graduated in 2020, and was in the Capstone Scholars program, which is how I originally met Dr. Hickey. And then we've kind of stayed in touch throughout the years. And right now I am currently applying to medical school. I actually 15 minutes ago got a call that I got an acceptance.
Yay.
So that was really exciting.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Yay.
yeah, it was awesome. And then right now I'm also working for MUSC transplant as a certified transplant preservationist. So that's what I'm doing in my gap year right now.
And that's a very unique field. Tell us about transplant medicine, because I've been involved in it, as you know, in the past, but enlighten us as to what that process is.
Yeah, so I originally started out in the organ donation field. So there's these things called OPOs, which are organ procurement organizations. And in that role, I was basically the OR coordinator for every organ procurement in South Carolina. So I would travel all across the state to different hospitals and kind of guide the OR staff through what an organ procurement looks like, all of the instruments that they would need, as well as like kind of making sure that all of the incoming teams from wherever are getting what they need and collaborating. One thing that I didn't really realize until joining transplant and organ donation is that it is such a team effort. You have people coming in from literally all over the country that have never worked together before, and they're all working on the same patient to procure those organs successfully and all kind of advocating for their own patients at home. So basically, like, you kind of have to juggle everybody's different interests of getting what they want for their patient while keeping logistics in mind, timing, all of that stuff, because people are flying in, people are driving. So it's like a very coordinated team kind of effort. And I worked in that role for a little over a year, and then I transitioned to working for the transplant center at MUSC. So now I'm kind of more on the visiting team side of going all over the country to different hospitals as either a heart procurement coordinator or lungs or liver sometime too, and going there and kind of supporting my surgeons with whatever they need, coordinating logistics, and then just making sure that we get the organs back in a timely manner, ensure the success of the transplant. And then I also help with any preservation of the organs. So making sure that they're packaged correctly, staying at a good temperature, a cool temperature for them. And if we have organs coming into MUSC, I'm also in charge of those. So helping preserve kidneys and livers and pump
Well,
them,
we
all that stuff. Lots of
I was going to say
technology.
we could talk forever on organ procurement. I've aged myself when I say organ procurement, don't I? Because what's the proper term?
No,
Okay,
procurement's right.
okay,
Procurement's right. It's organ harvest is kind of the
that's right.
older
And that,
terminology that we're trying to get
and that was
away
a term I
from.
was very familiar with when I worked in the operating room setting because we used to do what we considered
Hmm.
organ harvest at the time. And for those that are listening,
Hmm.
the whole field of transplant surgery and organ harvesting and organ procurement, it involves a lot of different things. Number one, first of all, the patient has to indicate on their driver's license as well as to families and friends that they intend to donate their organs when it comes to a situation or scenario when that would be the ultimate process. For example, a car accident, a head injury, whatever the situation. Once they have indicated to family and friends and have noted on their driver's license that they want to be an organ donor, then the system starts. And as Shelby said, it's a huge system. It's unbelievable how many people are involved when we have, for example, an 18-year-old that's indicated they want to give of their organs. Teams are mobilized from other states. Teams will fly in, surgeons will fly in. The operating room has to get the room ready, get the patient prepped and ready. It's just unbelievable. And I worked in that arena myself for years. I originally worked for the Lions Eye Bank way back in the day when I worked in trauma emergency room, where I actually procured corneas and globes on the side. So I learned a lot about organ procurement at the University of South Carolina. I was actually the advisor for the student organization specific to organ procurement, because what we tried to do is educate people on how important it is not only just to sign your driver's license, but also to let your family know or friends know. And that's critical, because a lot of times, in my case, in the emergency room scenario, when I would approach a family, when I would notice that their family member had signed their license, I would then approach the family and say, I don't know if you've had the conversation, but according to the driver's license, your son, daughter, whomever has indicated that they're very interested in donating. And the family, I believe, and I don't know now, Shelby, but I believe the family still had a say in the process at that time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the kind of whole process is like somebody gets into some type of life-threatening accident. And whether they're an organ donor or not, the hospital is not really taking that into consideration when they enter for treatment, because the hospital's main priority is obviously
Correct.
saving a
Right.
person's life, right? So if they're coming in from some type of trauma, that hospital is going to treat them exactly like how they would treat every other
Exactly.
patient, take all measures that they could to save their life. And then if unfortunately the patient is pronounced brain dead, or if they they're stabilized and taken up to ICU, and the provider just doesn't see them really coming back from this kind of catastrophic injury, then the provider would kind of indicate that to the OPO and say, hey, this patient is brain dead, or hey, this family is thinking about withdrawing life support from this patient. If you're interested in approaching, now would be the time. And so then we have lots of different roles in this process. So there's family coordinators that are specifically trained to make those approaches to families, because it's just such a devastating time and can be really sensitive. So we just want to make sure that people are getting all of the information that they can and kind of recognizing the patient's final wishes to be an organ donor, because sometimes it can be difficult for the family in that time to recognize that this is what the patient wanted. So the OPO is kind of advocating for the patient as much as they can. And then it's just kind of a collaborative process between the OPO and the family as far as like getting to the procurement, because once they approach the family, the OPO takes over kind of all of the tests that they have to run to evaluate organ function, and takes over reaching out to centers for organ offers, and then works with the family to try to find a time that would be best for them to do the procurement. Sometimes families have different requests on different days, or they want to be able to have what we call an honor walk, which is like the patient's final walk through the hospital. And it's really beautiful. They make an announcement over the hospital, and lots of nurses and different staff gather in the hallways as the donor is getting rolled to the OR, and just kind of recognizing that they are making a difference in so many people's lives, and just like a really beautiful send off for them.
And if you're hearing that for the first time, just look it up on YouTube. I'm sure there are videos that can help you with the honor walk, and I've seen and participated in many, and the joy that a family has at such a devastating time, in my experience, to be able to donate their relatives' organs, knowing that it's going to help other people, is just so profound. I mean, to be there and to share that moment with family. And when I was involved, I even made promises and followed through to go to the operating room with the patient, to be there with them, to honor the family's wishes. So yes, it's such a vital role that you have in an area that very few people know about. So I'm very excited that you're in the position you're in now, and as a future MD, you're going to be so much further ahead than all of your peers as far as your knowledge about this whole process, because you've learned how to scrub gown and glove, you've learned about the surgical instruments, you've learned about the roles of the various people on teams, you developed your time management, organization, communication skills, because you're collaborating with so many people. So that's huge. Now you're taking a little bit more than a gap year.
Yeah. A couple.
I shared that your path was a little different than most, and I have your resume, so I know that you did a little teaching when you graduated from school. We'll get all this out of the way, then we'll jump into Nicaragua. So tell us about Teach for America, because there may be some people that have heard about it but don't know about it, and might be intrigued by it.
Yeah, definitely. So I was getting kind of close to graduation and wasn't really sure if I wanted to go straight into medical school. So I was kind of looking at different gap year opportunities and came across Teach for America. They were at one of our like job fairs or student work fairs or something. They do a lot of outreach on college campuses. And if you haven't seen them at your college campus, you can always just go to their website, teachforamerica.org. And there's so much information. Recruiters are happy to talk to anybody who's interested. But Teach for America is an organization that was founded to basically address the shortage of teachers, especially in high need schools. So one way that they go about doing that is this alternate teacher training pathway of Teach for America. So they get college students that are interested in becoming teachers or that are just very passionate about education, and they kind of take them through this training process over the summer before you start teaching, and you get placed into a Title I school, which is typically a lower income school that has more teacher shortages. You get placed in there, and then they give you all of this year-round support of how to create lesson plans, how to address student behaviors, things like that. And you kind of just learn how to be a teacher while you're teaching, which can be kind of difficult, honestly. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is a really life-changing thing. I think teaching probably had like the biggest impact on me out of all of the gap year experiences that I've done, especially because I started teaching during COVID, actually. So I started all online teaching Zoom students, which was kind of overwhelming because it's just me teaching to a black screen of Zoom screens. But I had to get really creative with connecting with students and kind of building the rapport over the computer. And I did get to know a lot of my students that way. And as the year progressed, we got more familiar with each other. Cameras would come on. We eventually started coming in person, and then just getting to like see them and see their curiosity and excitement for school was honestly just the best, especially considering where we started out in COVID. So, like, getting to do Teach for America and give back in that way was just a really great experience. You learn so much about yourself, about what you are able to do, and kind of face things that are in your control and things that are not in your control. I feel like as an undergrad student, you kind of have this idea that, oh, I can do anything, I can fix things, I can make everything better. And once you get out in the real world, you have to kind of come to terms with, well, I can maybe not fix everything, but I can fix this one little thing, and that'll make things better,
Well, that's a
just
good
kind of.
lesson learned, and know that one of the future hats you're going to wear as a physician is teacher. So it's great that you already got that
Mhm.
experience under your belt. And one last thing, Shelby, if you don't mind, share what your research was at the University of South Carolina. You did some
Oh, yeah.
research, I believe, something along the line of Spanish speaking. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was in USC, I early on started volunteering at the Good Samaritan Clinic, which is a Spanish speaking clinic in Columbia. And then I got involved my senior year with Dr. Fenton in her language development of diverse learners lab, which was kind of building on my experience with Spanish and looking at the language development of multilingual learners. Pretty much it was mostly Spanish students in the Lexington schools, but there were a couple of other students that spoke different languages, and assessing if their language development was going on par with expectations or if they were kind of lagging behind a little bit. A lot of the tests and exams that are given for language development are not specifically to multilingual learners, so they can kind of skew the results
Mm.
one way or another and inaccurately diagnose students with development disorders or without language development disorders. So it was kind of seeing how the tests are accurately evaluating language development and then collaborating with those teachers to create better supports for multilingual learners, which also just kind of support all of the students in the classroom. And that's kind of what introduced me to teaching and kind of what opened the door of like, oh, I might like Teach for America and getting to work in the
I
classroom with
like
students and
your
stuff.
door.
So
I like
all
your door
connected.
opening concept. It's something I don't know if you've heard me say it before, but I've always felt that I was a glorified door opener. I love opening doors of opportunity, and I always encourage my students, step through the door. If you like it, keep going. If you don't like it, at least you stepped through the door and you saw it. So that I like to use
Yeah.
that concept. Let's talk about Nicaragua. So I believe you went on a trip to Nicaragua with me. Is that correct?
Yes, we went spring 2017 is my freshman year.
What can you recall? I mean, it's been a few years ago, and you've done a lot of things since then. I mean, as I recall, I believe you had pretty good Spanish proficiency. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm a bit of a hoarder, and I found my notebook that I kept
Well,
from Nicaragua.
for
So I was
the
reading
listeners, this is an
it.
audio podcast, but I'm doing it by Zoom initially, so I get to see who I'm speaking to. And Shelby just made my day by sharing her diary of sorts. One thing I did in my course was I encouraged my students to have a diary and just to write things down that they experience, and then we did reflections in the evening. And here now, years later, you still can go back to where you were many years ago and see the younger you and compared to where you're at right now.
Mhm.
But that's great. I'm glad you shared the diary. I appreciate that. So tell us about your journey in
Yeah,
your
of
journey in
course. But
Nicaragua.
yeah, oh, well, it was honestly one of like the cementing experiences that I had in pursuing medicine. When I was a freshman, I was kind of interested in medicine, but just like still trying things out. And after going on that trip, I came back and I was just like, yes, medicine is for me. So it was just a really great experience of getting to go and see a different culture. Like I mentioned, I worked at the Good Samaritan Clinic before going there. So I actually did have a little bit of exposure of using Spanish in like the medical realm and kind of seeing common chronic diseases and things like that, at least in the United States. So it was exciting to go to Nicaragua and kind of get to use my skills in this clinic and get to learn even more about different tropical medicine and get to connect with just lots of great people. I wrote about Dr. Gutierrez and I remember
Mm.
him really well. One thing I did not remember was that he was actually a doctor on Naked
That's
and
correct.
Afraid, and I wrote that in my journal.
Yeah, we
That
all
was
become very
fun.
attached to the doctors in our clinics because the ISL model, which I really appreciate, they take their time. The doctors, they do. They're from the
Hmm.
local country. They speak English, but they take their time to do a head to toe physical exam, and they work with the students to try to come up with a medical diagnosis. And for most students, when you're a freshman or a
Hmm.
sophomore, you haven't even taken an anatomy course yet, but here the doctor is saying, well,
Hmm.
Shelby, tell me what their diagnosis is. And of course you're
Right.
very awkward in the beginning, but by the end of the week your self-confidence is through the roof because the doctor, he or she, have taken their time to work with you and to help you
Hmm.
to do the physical exam. And by doing that, they become a great mentor. And by doing that also, you
Hmm.
really become connected to them. So Dr. Gutierrez, who we've had on our Nicaragua trips, stands out as one of those great role models. And I typically, when I work with my pre-med students, I encourage them to adopt a lot of things that Dr. Gutierrez does. And he's a wonderful role model. Whenever and Shelby, I don't know if you know or remember, but I've done many trips with Dr. Gutierrez. He always reaches out and touches a patient's shoulder. How are you doing today? He makes human
Hmm.
contact. Then he
Yeah.
makes eye contact. And then he always asks about the family. Tell me how your family's doing. How's your daughter doing? So he always
Hmm.
makes a personal connection way before he even gets into why they're there. And it's so unique and it's so nice to see that. So refreshing also that he makes that personal connection with each and every patient that he has. And I always try to encourage my students to, when you do shadow docs, look at the good things they have and try to incorporate them into who the future you is going to be. And I'm hoping that a
Hmm.
lot of students have seen a lot of great things that this particular doctor, Dr. Gutierrez, has done, and hopefully have adopted some of those things for themselves.
Yeah, I wrote down a lot that I was just so grateful for all of the teaching that the doctors did. They were very patient and just kind of the letting us do the physical exams and kind of deduce what we were thinking as far as diagnosis was something that I just feel like you don't get a whole lot of experience with when you're shadowing and stuff because you're just kind of observing. But it's very hands-on. The classes that they give before the clinic are super informative on how to take blood pressure and possible diagnoses that you might have. So it's just a really well designed
Was there anything in
experience.
particular? I know you have to dig back and maybe look through your diary. Was there anything particular, a patient or scenario that resonates still today that you can recall?
Yeah, I actually had one that I wrote on my primary
Oh,
application for AMCAS because Nicaragua was actually one of my most important experiences in my application. But I remember that there were a couple of kids that would just play outside of the clinic every day. And we kind of just started playing with them, started building a relationship with them. And one of them was a little girl, and she always wore long sleeves, which was interesting because it was very hot. I remember it being
mm,
very hot there. So she was wearing long sleeves every day that I saw her. And then on the final day of clinic, when we were kind of having our little celebration and giving prizes and playing games with all of the kids, she wore a dress that didn't have sleeves. And I sat down next to her when we were playing Duck Duck Goose, and I saw her arms kind of had a little bit of a rash on them. And so I talked to Dr. Gutierrez. I was like, I think she might have a fungal infection on her skin. And he came over and looked at her and said, Yep, that's correct. And gave her an ointment, like literally as we were
mm,
leaving to get on the bus. So that was like very impactful for me because I was like, wow, like she probably could have not gotten treatment for that for
mhm,
months
mhm.
and months since we were in just such a remote little town. So it was really cool to kind of get to do that and make that difference in her life and feel kind of like a
Oh, for
doctor.
sure.
It was
Well,
cool.
it is nice too that girl felt that level of trust to be able to come and sit by you and be with you, and that you had recognized earlier, if it
Hmm.
wasn't for you recognizing there's something wrong here. She's wearing long sleeves, and then when she comes with the dress, you see the arms exposed, you see the rash, you bring it to the attention of the doctor. I mean, that changes her life. And I mean, it's those simple
Hmm.
things, and it's amazing how when for me it's always humbling every time I've done it. I'm sure for yourself too, when you see the level of poverty, but how a simple little thing like that, a gesture on your behalf to go and get the doc on the final day to make a difference in her life. I mean, that's huge. I mean, it would be nice if you'd had
Hmm.
follow up with her to see how she was doing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we were leaving right then, but I'm glad that we at least got to give her a little something before we
We know a
left.
common theme that I've seen, Shelby, through most of the podcast interviews has been that of education. A lot of students, as get involved with filling the prescriptions and helping the patients with discharge instructions, whether there's dressings needed or medications prescribed. But when they get back a week or two later, they would usually file through my office and feel really upset that at this point in time the medicine has run out, the treatments, whatever it was we gave, are done, they're
Hmm.
gone. But I always tried to reassure them that the best gift that we gave was that of education, that we helped to educate the patients on how to best take care of the problems that they had. Because if we simply went down, just put a band-aid on the problem, then we'd be doing a
Hmm.
great disservice. And I don't know if you can recall doing any education. I mean, we all rotated through pharmacy, but just by being in your pod and being there with the doctor, there was a lot of education going on for each and every patient.
And I think that it even even if you just educate them on what they have. I mean, I wrote about a couple of things where we unfortunately weren't really able to do anything for the patients as far as treatment goes. There was a woman who had an underdeveloped uterus. She was 26 years old and she was just not getting the correct hormones from her uterus and ovaries. And she was kind of experiencing menopause
Mm,
at 26 years old. And she was looking for possible hormone therapies or something. I mean, that was a little outside of our scope at our clinic, but she did, I think, get a little bit of relief just learning more about her
right.
symptoms and learning about like what she was going through and possible next steps if she ever was able to get to the hospital down in Managua or something.
Mm,
Just kind of hearing patients and
well,
listening to them, I think can
I'm
really
glad
give
you
back
shared
to
that.
them.
Not any different from a patient here having a fear factor because they don't know what's going on, correct? I mean, we have the
Mm-hmm.
advantage
Mm-hmm.
of internet and access to find out a lot of what our symptoms are, and maybe she wasn't in that position that she didn't have that opportunity. So, as you said, just by sharing what her symptoms were, that gave her great relief or understanding. Hey, I want to go back to what you shared earlier about that you shared the Nicaragua trip on your med school application. I've heard from almost every one of my pre-med students that when they go for their med school interview, the fact that they've been on a service learning trip has come up in the interview. And because for most
Mm-hmm.
people like yourself, it has been very pivotal. It is, I like to call it the hook. Everyone has a hook somewhere when you reflect back on why am I going down this trail. It was either a passionate faculty member, a situation, in this case, in your case, going in country to Nicaragua, collaborating with a healthcare team where you said, I see myself doing that. So I'm glad you
Mm-hmm.
shared that you put it on the med school application because that's going to really make you stand out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think just like for anybody applying to medical school, getting as much exposure as you can to different cultures and different people. If you can't go outside of the country, that's fine. Work with people that are maybe in inner city clinics or the homeless population, just people that you might not normally interact with on just a daily basis, just to kind of learn more about what they're going through. And luckily, I very privileged in kind of being able to have just like basic healthcare insurance and places to live and stuff. But when you work with people that are unhoused, you learn so many things that you might not even have ever considered in their barriers to getting care. So just anything that can kind of open your mind up, open your perspective up to working with lots of different
And
people of
Shelby,
different
that's
backgrounds
a
is really
that's a
a great
great
opportunity.
recommendation. As you know, when I come back from my trips, I always share with my students that we had this wonderful opportunity, which few do have, to travel to another country to work with an underserved population. Yet in our own backyard, we have just as much need. So I appreciate you
Mm-hmm.
validating that pre-med students, healthcare students take advantage of the opportunities around your school, around your community, because there are many working with the homeless, as you shared, working with underserved populations. They're all out there, and they all have great need. And do it from the heart because
Mm-hmm.
we want well-rounded doctors, well-rounded nurses, PT, OT, pharmacy, etc. The more experiences you have, the better advocate you're going to be for your future patients. So I know that your future patients are
Mm-hmm.
going to benefit greatly from all of your experiences. Shelby, what would you tell somebody that's a student, freshman student starting at a university that has kind of sort of heard of service learning trips? Maybe there's not a course at their university like what you had. Maybe there's a student organization like FIDE or AED or something at their university that they can travel with and go to another country. What would you say to someone that's kind of on the fence? They're a little afraid of the language. Maybe they've never traveled before. Maybe they're concerned about the quality of the food that they're going to receive, and just being in an environment with a faculty member if they're on a faculty led trip, or if not, with a cohort of students that they don't know that well. what would you say to that person who's trying to make that decision? Is this going to be valuable to me? Am I going to benefit from it? Will I learn?
I think that you should do it scared.
You should do it what? Sorry,
When
say
I
that
was
again.
you should do it
Okay.
scared. Even if you're scared, just do it. That's kind of what my motto was when I was rock climbing. You can do it scared. There's so many things that you're never really going to know until you try it. If you're not sure about the language, if you're not sure about the food, that's it. You're not sure. You got to try it out to see how you're going to do. And a lot of the times, you're really going to surprise yourself in kind of how well you adapt, how much you like things. It might be the opportunity that you get to discover something that you're incredibly passionate
Mhm.
about. And it might set you down on a path that's going to take you through your whole life of loving Spanish and trying out all these different things. But just you'll never know until you try. And I think that if you're hesitant about it, you just kind of got to lean into that curiosity. Anxiety is not always a bad thing. It can also just be excitement
Mhm.
in a
Yeah.
disguise. So I think doing anything that gives you an opportunity to grow is a good thing to
Well,
do. And like you said with the doors, if you find that it opens a door that you
yeah.
like, keep walking down it. And if you don't like it, at least now
Well,
you know.
I like your comments. Do it when you're scared and lean into curiosity. Those are great. I mean that's kind of in my life, as you know. I mean, do it when I'm scared, as you know. I'm a high altitude mountain climber, yet I'm afraid of heights. I'm a
Right.
pilot and a skydiver, even though I'm afraid of heights. And leaning into curiosity, I like that. And you know, I think you learn from pursuing challenges in life. And I know that you were a rock climber, and I'm sure there was a fear factor every time you were climbing, but there was preparation and there was training, but yet there's always that fear factor there. And you learn from the fear factor, you learn where your limitations are. And that you don't know that until you try it. And you know, as I've shared before, I can teach all about culture. I can teach a whole lot of things in a classroom setting, but until you have that experiential education opportunity where you actually go and experience it, that's when you're really going to learn. And I appreciate that you shared that with us. Hey, one thing I didn't prepare you for that I've been asking those that I've been interviewing is to share books that they've read that that may be specific to the area you're working in now, or something you read that's powerful, or I mean, if it's healthcare related, that would be great, or something inspirational. And again, I
Mhm.
apologize, I didn't prepare you for that, but does any
Oh no,
does any
that's okay.
does anything come to mind?
I love talking about books. So, I mean, kind of the number one pre-med book that I feel like everybody should read is When Breath
Oh,
Becomes
totally my favorite. Yep.
Air. So, When Breath Becomes Air, it's a beautiful book kind of about medicine and life and what you value, especially when it comes to facing the end of your life, which I think is just really applicable in
Yep.
organ donation and
Yep.
transplant, working with people that are dying and also getting a second chance at life. I'm getting to see both sides, and it really just puts things into perspective. And then there's another book that I really like. It's not totally medicine related, but it's just kind of talking about people's lives. It's called I Think You Should Talk to Someone, and it's written by a psychiatrist or a psychologist that's kind of commenting on her journey. I think she's a psychologist, sorry, because she was going to medical school and then she kind of realized that she preferred being able to spend a lot of time talking and connecting with patients. So she kind of moved to the psychologist route and counseling route and talks about just all of these different life experiences that her patients are having, which is, I just love kind of getting to see the different experiences that people are having and how they're dealing with it and stuff. And just, I love a good psychology book. So
Well,
I
those are
think it's a
great. Yeah,
great one.
those are great. I don't know the second one, but When Breath Becomes Air, that was on my syllabus. for class. And again, I
Mm-hmm.
never know if students read my syllabus or not, but I think I've read that one a couple of times, and it's have a box of Kleenex with you when you're reading it, because it is very
Mm-hmm.
profound. And I think, and I appreciate you sharing those books. I believe, I'm a firm believer in, you should know what you're getting yourself into. So, especially with
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, I think a lot of our students that aspire to be in healthcare are enamored by different TV shows that really don't represent what we do in healthcare. And so I encourage shadowing, but a lot of times you have problems shadowing. There's a lot of barriers in place. That's why it's so beautiful when you do get to go to Latin America or go on an international service trip. The barriers aren't there. You're able to shadow, and it's such a joyful experience. So I do encourage students to try to shadow as much as possible. I do encourage them to get involved in the community, as Shelby has said, working with the homeless, working in a clinic, anywhere and everywhere that you can go where you can experience something that's going to help you in the future, and more importantly, help you
Mm-hmm.
to understand where these people are coming from. And that's critical.
Mm-hmm.
One beautiful thing about the International Service Learning Trip is we go into the homes of the patients that we're treating. As you recall, on day number one, we walk through a community with a local interpreter and a CUNY member, and we knock on doors, and people invite us into their homes, and we get to see where they live, and what, sometimes it helps us to understand why they have the symptoms they have because we're in their home. So yeah, beautiful experiences. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Shelby, great chatting with you today, and I appreciate you taking care of your dog. that
Yep, sorry. They were a little
no, no,
vocal today.
no.
Lots of excitement on our
No, it's all
street.
good. Anything you'd like to share before we sign off? I know you share a lot of great stuff, but anything you want to share before we head up?
No, I think just to anybody that's considering doing international service learning, I think it's a great opportunity. I met some of my closest friends on it. You just get to have so many different experiences that kind of open you up to many more experiences down the road. So I would suggest doing it. And like you said, if you can't, then keep your eyes open, keep looking for places in your community where you can give back, because there is so much need everywhere
I
around
agree.
us.
What a great way to end our podcast, by sharing the opportunities that are in our own backyard for people to take advantage of. Well, Shelby, it's been a true blessing to know you, and I'm so excited for your future path in healthcare. Can't wait to be calling you Dr. S, or whatever you're going to go by down the road. Again, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it, and let's keep in touch. I want to sincerely thank our guest Shelby for her willingness to join us today on the International Service Learning Experiential Medical Education podcast. But most importantly, I want to thank Shelby for the passion she has shared with us, specific to her own unique journey in healthcare. As an organ preservation coordinator, Shelby has touched the lives of both patients and their families, and continues to pay it forward through her collaborative work with healthcare teams that are focused on making a difference in the lives of others.